Hi and welcome to a Roaring podcast where we interview interesting guests talking about innovation, data, product development, and tech. Stay tuned and get some new insights. My name is Pontus Holmberg and I'm your host. It's a pleasure to welcome Oscar Rundqvist, who is leading the work of H&amp's new digital customer experience. Oscar is a true digital wizard, and I will try to cherry-pick some of his insights regarding digital transformation and how to create a world-class customer experience. Stay tuned. Hi, Oscar.
Hello.
How are you today?
Very good, thanks. How are you?
I'm fine. Looking forward for an interesting conversation in the landscape of data, product innovation, and digitalization. When I started, doing some research on you when we decided or when you decided to join the podcast, uh, I noticed that your background is, at least from my opinion, or at least from my side, slightly different than other people working within this digital landscape. You started off within the investment banking industry. Can you elaborate a little bit around that? And especially, how does your journey look from there to now and what you've done in between?
Yes, definitely. No, but I started studying in Stockholm, the Stockholm School of Economics, and then that was like a very traditional move into the investment banking. So started off within at Lazard, an international investment bank. But then I quite early on realized that this is not what I think is fun. What I thought I didn't get the most out of my creativity, and I didn't look forward to every day. So then I quite early on realized that I want to move on and do something else. And then started the companies and also moved to Hitta.se, where I worked as head of growth. And then also been involved with startups along the journey, and now then working with digital customer experiences at H&amp. And I feel that this is much more in line with what I think is fun. So yeah, maybe not the typical journey towards tech and digitalization, but yeah, I feel that this is more me.
That's nice. And how was that transition? I mean, how did you do sort of uh, how did you get those jobs, or did they ask about your background, or did obviously you are obviously have been interested in the product side of things and digitalizations, but as a banker, obviously, as you said before, if I look at a banker or coming from looking at someone from the investment banking industry, it's a little bit more, how would I put it, not less creative, more analytic, and steering towards the money.
Yeah.
How did you did that?
No, but I see your point. I think starting off, I have many friends within investment banking and management consulting, so I need to pick my words here. But I think investment banking, management consulting, and those kind of typical industries after my kind of education, I think they are attracting great people. So I think it's really inspiring to be around really, really smart people and very high performing individuals. And I think also learning wise, you get a great bucket of learnings. You work long hours, of course, and then because you really you gain a lot of experience and knowledge within a short period of time. I think that those kind of not even 2 years, I learned so much that I use on a daily basis also today. So you learn how to tackle problems, you learn how to be structured, you learn how to prioritize your time, etc. But I think then how I then moved on and how I managed to get these kind of jobs within a completely new and other industry is because I've had a background also before from startups, startups on my own. I've done part-time jobs within other industries, so I had experience from other industries since before, and also then when I expressed a lot of interest and curiosity to other industries, I think that maybe was some of the key reasons why I managed to get these jobs early on.
Great. And yeah, and as for the record, obviously we love investment bankers. It wasn't a way of. It's just a different. It's just a different kind of job. Yeah. So how do you, how do you use that experience from the sort of startup world in your sort of daily work today? Is there, obviously there is a startup is, yes, it's a startup. It's a smaller, obviously an entity than in comparison to H&M. Yeah, can you use that experience that you have from the startup world in your work today and how you run your division today? And then how would you do that?
Yes, I think startup experience, at least to me, has been uh, super valuable experience and learnings that I not only apply in my professional life today, but also I would say in my private life, because you learn to be smart when it comes to your time. I would say you learn how to prioritize and to spend time on the things that you think make sense, but you also learn that if you want to enter new ground, if you want to challenge things, you need to do it by yourself. You need to identify new challenges, new opportunities by yourself, and you need to also find answers by yourself. So you learn to really identify problems and opportunities at the same time. While maybe if you're used to working only at large corporates, you are used to this very big network of niched colleagues that are really good within their areas of expertise, and not as many generalists or broader areas of expertise. So you're used to like working together with a lot of niched experts. So that is maybe one thing that you learn, that you need to be very broad and to be quite flexible in your way of working.
Interesting. So at your current job today, you taking obviously bits and pieces from the startup world, but I could just imagine that obviously a big company such as H&M, they have this division because they want to move forward. They want to do the leaps in terms of creating world class products, to do the innovation that's needed to sort of face competition. Do they also sort of also allow for you to be that creative? Can you sense that you're actually within a startup, but obviously in a sort of within a big ecosystem?
Yes, I think actually one thing that we're applying now internally is that we're applying something that we call the co-founder mindset. So that is that when we now enter new ground, we all together across our company are co-founders of the next version of our company, meaning that we all need to take responsibility and ownership of yeah renewing ourselves and our company. And I think it's so cool to see, like, when you manage to mix a startup's speed in solving problems and identifying problems and a large corporate muscles, you get, I think you become really hard to beat, because sometimes you said, I guess startups will eat up all the large corporates because large corporates are so slow. But you could also turn that around. Like, since large corporates are big, they have much more resources. You could also argue that they should be able to be faster than startups. So when you manage to mix that, and when you manage to run together, which I really believe that we do currently at H&M, you can experience tremendous speed in renewing things and progressing and identifying new growth, new opportunities, and in the end, a new customer value.
Cool, makes sense. Yeah, I guess that you don't need to chase and raise capital within H&M, but because you if a project is sort of well defined and obviously you have a common ground for it, then you can go ahead and drive that, which is slightly more convenient, rather than you have a great idea and then there's a lot of hassle around to take that idea to become actually a fruitful product or whatever it is.
Yep, fully agree. And I think much of it is a mindset thing that when you as a big company manage to apply on a broad scale the mindset of curiosity and willingness to renew, I think that is when you manage to really get speed in your growth journey.
Yep. Yeah. So I think that me working with data, and how to use data to support digital processes and to support innovation for our customers, etc. I'm just curious on how much do you use data in your sort of work to create those digital new experiences or products. Is data sort of crucial for you in your sort of field and with your division?
Yes, for sure. I think data is a new like hygiene factor. You need to incorporate data in basically everything that you do. Maybe one challenge being a big company compared to a smaller company is that you get so much data, so you need to like
Yeah.
pick and choose what sources are the most important ones and how do they connect and relate to each other, etc. So you need to structure it, which is a problem that smaller companies don't face, for example. But I think, yeah, using data and like in all decisions that you take as a company these days, I would say is a no-brainer. And I think it's because it's just making things so much simpler. Historically, if gut feelings has been a key driver when taking decisions, these days it's so much simpler, and you're taking shortcuts towards the right decisions when you incorporate data in as much as you do. But then I think also, if you want to experience true innovation, sometimes you also need to, don't forget, I would say, gut feeling. Because if you don't incorporate gut feeling before you even test things, then you would only base things on historic and previous patterns, and you wouldn't manage to break new patterns and new ground.
So you got a lot of data, obviously, at H&M. And do you is it simple for you to get access to those insights from your BI teams or etc.? Or is that a how does that work? Do you can you go and knock on the door and say, hey, I would like to get consumer data insights regarding this and this, or how does that process work for you when you want to make data driven decisions? uh, how accessible is this pile of data or insights that are created within the BI warehouse at H&M?
Yep. Um, no, but we have many great teams working with data in different areas of our company, and it's very accessible. I guess data can always be even more accessible and even more structured and even more translated into decision making formats. But yeah, for us it basically works that we identify opportunities, and then we look what kind of data we have, and then we apply all the possible data we have to take as much as good decisions as possible based on that data. But as I said, I think sometimes could be a challenge that when you are too big or very big, you have so much data that you need to also find great ways to structure the data, that you don't, which is challenges that you don't face as a smaller company. But yeah, very accessible. But of course, I guess all companies these days could and can improve to structure and translate raw data into decision-making formats even more.
So, in your opinion, taking your sort of experience from the startup world, potentially also from an investment banking world now, because now I want to talk a little bit about money and money and digitalization and innovation. Because for me, digitalization, innovation, product development, those sort of concepts, innovation, they often tend to, I use them very frequently and we're talking about customer onboarding processes, we're talking about customer experience. So there's a pile of statements or words, that buzzwords that I throw in here and there. And I'm just a little bit curious in your take on digitalization. How does that create business? How does it relate to actually support revenue streams, etc.? We are talking about data, so that's, I understand that that's taking decisions based on data, using that data to enhance your product development, to enhance your customer experience, but still, it's still quite intangible, at least for me. How do you have any take on that? How does all the work that you are doing, and that all the product people and innovation managers out there are doing, how can that sort of relate to actually support the business growth?
I think that when it comes to data, of course, it's in the core of everything that we do these days, and that's applicable for all companies, of course. But I think sometimes maybe you said like how the data translates into money. I think the most important thing, at least for me working with customer experiences, is to measure non-transactional behaviors. I think if you focus on too much on only tracking and do your follow-ups on transactions, I think you tend to be potentially short-term minded. That we could maximize sales, of course, but if we would forget to track and follow up the things earlier on in the funnel that leads to these transactions, we will lose long term. So I think even more
Yeah,
important to track and follow what's the behavior that leads to these transactions, and ensure that we have a positive trend when it comes to those kind of behaviors. For example, getting customers to visit you, getting customers to stay with you, getting customers to refer to your site. Those kind of behaviors that are more long-term behaviors that later in the funnel will lead to transactions.
yeah.
I think some companies maybe tend to focus too much on the latter part of the funnel. If that answers your question.
My question was long, complicated, and potentially, but it answered it, and it's really interesting because I think you said it well, that often you tend to focusing on you do the link between data or the analytic part of things, and then you link that to the transaction, which then ultimately will be the dollar sign in the end. But I think that focusing on the behavioral aspect of the interaction with the customers and what the customer is actually doing on your site or uh, various channels uh, is a long-term investment, and it's a long-term transaction creator. So at your daily work today, obviously, I'm guessing that this is then sort of a known factor for H&M or for your managers as well. So are they allowing sort of that mindset to they do understand that you educated them that, because you can put a lot of resources in identifying and tracing all those transaction based uh, behavior, but if you are looking at those sort of softer values that a customer is doing and interacting with you, are would you say that that's a concept that is, yeah, uh, commonly understood?
Yes, no, but I definitely I think it's also one reason is that maybe it's quite hard to track this behavior. Let's take an example like Voi. Most people in Sweden at least knows about Voi electric scooters. Maybe one of their most valuable customers may potentially someone that never does any rides him or herself, but rather someone that just walks around the streets of Stockholm, for example, and just tells and recommends everyone about this really, really cool opportunity to take electric bike rides instead of cabs or yeah. So maybe the best customer is someone that actually doesn't buy anything, but rather recommends and promotes others to ride, so that indirectly that customer leads to a lot of transactions, but that behavior itself is not transactional, and that is really hard to track. So I think those kind of challenges is also interesting for companies in the future, how to target and identify super important customers that are not trackable through transactions.
Yeah, that's really interesting. And for me, it sounds impossible to get hold of them or to understand who they are. But do you have some concepts around how you would sort of tackle that or getting closer to that?
I think some ways like affiliate
Mm,
models are one way, like use digitally at least working with unique links, so that you can link behaviors and new transactions and customers to specific people. Word of mouth, of course, harder, but then maybe you can work with similar ways of like, yeah, recommending codes or something. But definitely hard. But I'm sure that that will be a big part in the future. How to work with these kind of micro influencers or micro ambassadors on a broader scale. Maybe that's the next wave of the gig economy.
I remember this is a long time ago now, but I remember when I was younger, or I used to wear the brand we. And if I'm not, I'm potentially I'm making up this example now, but I think that they were using sort of ambassadors. I think it was Mickey Persbrandt or and sort of famous people that obviously were using their clothes. Uh, I, Interesting here is that that wouldn't potentially inspire me to buy clothes. But if I would see people that I not people but groups that I think that I belongs to, I would potentially be more willing to sort of purchase or like that. In my opinion, is obviously normally you would think about an influencer. Okay, an influencer, but still, I'm super aware that this person is an influencer and is potentially obviously making money. But I'm just fetching. If I would see someone in H&M clothes that I like, that is not an influencer, and that I know that hasn't been paid. This is just a hen or the egg.
Yeah, yeah, no, but I think it's much also about like the credible
Yeah,
source then, and I guess that's also how Naked grew with micro influencers around like 2-3 thousand. I think maybe the next wave will be rather 200 or 300 followers, like girl or boy next door marketing, which will be really cool, but hard to scale, of course. But I think that could be, if I would have people in my Instagram feed with like 200 or 300 followers and they would promote something, I would be much more intrigued to click than if a follower like with 100+ thousand followers would recommend something.
no, I agree. Uh, so fashion meets technology is one of my uh, notes that I had. And in your case, it actually is true that fashion meets technology and product and innovation. So you've touched on it before, but I know that when we spoke before, you actually, I think you said something interesting, a concept or a change in how you would see merchandising, e-merchandising, and in relation to social media. That, if I understand you correct, and you also wrote an interesting article on it that you posted on LinkedIn, that those two are actually not separated. They are obviously merging into something to become a one entity. You do not do your online shopping in a e-shop, and you do not only do things in social media today. If I understood you correct, they're actually merging, and that's, I guess that's an opportunity, but I guess it's a big sort of challenge for the whole industry.
Yes, challenge or opportunity. I think it's like, I think definitely that the line between social media and e-commerce is disappearing, and I think it's because everything online in some ways is becoming shoppable, because customers are more and more seeking convenience, so they want as like one-stop shop experience, like yeah, they don't want to move around for their different needs. And I think that's what we really see on social media, because social media has since a while back realized that they are providing a lot of inspiration to customers. that in the end leads to transactions. But until recently, those transactions has been made somewhere else. Now it's a huge social media push that they want to keep the checkout behavior also within their ecosystem, which of course is a huge uh, risk to all e-commerce sites that are dependent on that the checkout behaviors are done within their ecosystems. So I think the move or the corresponding move that e-commerce players should and maybe will do is to do the same thing, but instead of going from inspirational parts of the customer journeys to the transactional ones, we do the other way around. So from being really good at the transactional latter part to also capturing parts and behaviors and time spent on the earlier parts before customers actually know what they're looking for. Because going forward, I'm sure that social media, e-commerce, it will be a merge and new spaces created where customers find these community building experiences where they blend their inspirational way of spending time online with transactions. So going forward, I definitely think that any what you said in the beginning, like tech meets fashion. I think it's about managing to build as entertaining experience as possible to keep as much or to earn as much as possible of customers' time online. Because if you manage to earn their time, you will also get their transactions.
Rather than only be quotation mark only be a merchandising platform, you should also be something else, as a hybrid,
Yes.
sort of inspiring. And I'm not talking about that you have cool photos of your product, but inspiring in interacting with your potential customer, and that the customer, I'm guessing, is expecting something from the company. Rather than going on social media and get inspired there, you need to create something that will sort of compete or give the end user or the potential customers the ability to get inspired, but not only at social media. You want to own them, or you want to drive them towards your platform. But your platform, I guess, when we are talking, if we will have this conversation in 5 years, potentially we don't see H&M or other vendors as a merchandising platform. They might be something else. They've evolved to something else.
Yeah, I think you could do a comparison also to physical spaces. Uh, Today we have some main shopping streets or shopping areas in key in all cities. So that is where customers go. That is where customers spend time physically because that is where where they are attracted to most things. They are the best like coffee shops, the best basically the things that gets them to want to be there. Online today, the main shopping street is social media, where customers spend 28% of their time. Entertainment, gaming, that is the main shopping street. So that is where customers spend time. I think, and everyone want, of course, to be on the main shopping street where customer hang out, because then you also have the possibility to keep them within your scope of influence, so that you can build a long-term customer relationship. I think it's not enough these days to only have a transactional relationship with your customers. You need to have a more end-to-end relationship that will be more meaningful and more long-term.
Interesting. And also trust, I guess, goes into that.
Yes, definitely. Yeah, to earn, and also because trust. I think trust is a huge thing early on in the customer journey, especially these days with like fake news, etc. That you hang out in places where you know that you can trust what you see, so that you don't need to question what you get your inspiration from.
Yeah, cool. So trying to get back to sort of not your role, but one word in your role is digital customer experience. So yeah, how do you create that world class customer experience? That's obviously it's a if you had a full answer to that, yeah, you if we had it, we would be on Bahamas and sipping on a drink. But I guess that we touched on it. But I think, what's the ingredients for creating that world class customer experience in terms of this in this digital landscape? Then.
I think, of course, as you say, very broad and difficult questions. I think like some reflections at least is that I think that you need to know what's out there. You need to use everything in your space that your customers use, because then you know what they're used to and you know what they appreciate from other similar solutions, so that you can basically pick raisins from different things and build a good overall experience. And also I think it's the smoothness. Like you want the experience to be very smooth, and you want all noise eliminated. No noise. I know when I use apps or customer experiences, I hate when I see areas that I think is unnecessary. You don't want that. You don't have time to unnecessary buttons or navigation bars, or you want it to be to the point, because you want it to be convenient and you want it to be relevant. So maybe smooth and eliminate the noise would be two things to have a short answer.
No, no, but I can make a sort of a link to what we are working with or what I'm working with. Onboarding, it's basically an onboarding process that is, as you say, smooth. I've seen examples, obviously not from the fashion industry, but from banking industry and the financial industry, asking me a lot of questions to become a customer. But I know that you asked for my social security number, and then I'm supposed to fill in my address, and I'm supposed to fill in a lot of details manually into a form. Uh, but I've already given you my personal number, so why don't you just be clever and use the personal number or a civic number that
Yes,
is then obviously linked to a lot of different data sources that would do the onboarding process in 5 seconds, rather than me to fill in the information that is already known, potentially would be known for the company. That's just an example where I agree with you that smoothness is, it's the word, I think.
I agree. I think it's to respect the customers and users' time,
Yeah.
because time is like, especially younger users these days, they're like the patience level is very low. So you need to, like, every second counts. Every second that a user these days spend on something that is unnecessary, it in the end causes frustration. So you need to be very cautious with how you take and spend your users' time. And I think maybe like previous generations aren't that sensitive to spending time online with unnecessary tasks, but the younger customers definitely are. And I think if you waste their time, you will lose the users and customers.
I agree, and I think that I understand that things might be complicated for some onboarding processes, but I think talking to someone 16, 15, 18 years old, they're just expecting that it's going to work. Because and I think the challenge for us working with this field is that you have good examples where things is very super smooth, uh, because it might be simpler processes, less complex. But for the end user and that generation, they don't care whether your onboarding process is complex because there is a regulatory framework that is controlling it. They are just expecting to sign up for a banking service or whatever it is. It's going to be as simple as sign up, uh, or log in to whatever services, uh, with Facebook login system or Google login system. That So I think it's a generation.
Yeah. Exactly. I think it's like smooth and eliminated noise is two things. And the third then that I would then mention also is like expected relevancy. Compared to, I think users these days are spoiled, I think, in a good way when it comes to relevancy. Because, for example, then the usage of TikTok, if a user sees two or three clips in a row that are not relevant, they bounce. So they're used to super and highly relevant experiences all the time. So I think that is also that they expect super accurate relevancy algorithms and personalization experiences. That is also, of course, putting a lot of challenges to digital companies these days, but I think it's exciting challenges. And on that, I think it's a cool trend right now where companies are starting to even more let customers create their own relevancy. Look at Spotify, how all Spotify app experiences are unique because users create different kind of playlists, follow different artists, etc. So all experiences are 100% unique. Same thing now with, like, of course, Instagram, you follow your own accounts, but also like Facebook, when they've started to open up even more to like indicate if this content is relevant to you or not, so that they can like blend the human-led personalization with the data-led personalization, that mix creates a really cool relevancy loop. So relevancy is the third thing that I would add to this short answer on how to create great customer
Now
experiences.
we have the foundation for a new company. No, but that's very interesting. And then when you're talking about relevance, what strikes me then is uh, mentioning algorithms to obviously support greater relevance. And what's your take on? I'm using it as a buzzword now. AI, machine learning, and those sort of concepts and technologies. Is that something that from your perspective, are looking into, potentially are using?
Yes, I think AI and machine learning is, or at least should be, relevant to all companies these days. But I think that the conditions has changed quite a lot. I'm thinking about, for example, cookie consent, GDPR, those kind of things that in ways makes it more challenging to get enough data to enable the full potential of this technology. So that is also one of the reasons I think to why this human-led personalization I talked about before is coming even more now, because it's a shortcut basically towards creating the same level of relevant experiences by doing it together with customers. So basically opening up the personalization algorithms transparently and letting the customers help you on an individual level to improve them and keep them up to date. And then it's very consent driven, of course.
Yeah, as you said, GDPR, cookie consent. It's they're not making it easier for for companies to understand their customer, and potentially for some good reasons, but there's good intention, obviously, because there's a legal aspect of it. Today, when we sit down and do innovation conceptualization, we have great ideas, but they're often stuck into that legislation sort of hinder with doesn't matter whether it's you need to be compliant, or you need to be obviously respectful in how you're using your data. But I just I can sense that, at least for me, it hinders me, because I have a ton of great ideas which I know that we can develop, that would create this and this value, but we might not be able to do it, because then we are obviously breaching uh, some regulations, which is just it's a challenge. There's a pile of good things lying on the shelf, but that we cannot sort of utilize because of those regulatory challenges.
Yep. No, but yeah, exactly. New conditions to work with. But I think it also, like I said, opens up new opportunities to instead turn this around and let customers do it for themselves, basically, which is in ways much more accurate ways of reaching personalized experiences. So I think it's really interesting times, and but as you say, yeah, new conditions.
Yeah. Before I let you go, and this is also this $1 million question, but since you already delivered the prior ones, uh, if I would sort of cherry pick your brain for one or two sort of, or three key takeaways from your point of view, in regards to creating this customer experience, and how to sort of be successful in developing sort of world class products, is there any sort of short key findings that you can just, at least from your point of view, what's your sort of mantra, what's sort of your concept in your head when you're working on a daily basis?
Yeah. Yeah, of course, again, big question, but really exciting topic. Accept the smoothness, eliminated noise, and the relevance in the experience, I would maybe add then a bit of surprise, that you need to surprise the customer. If you build an experience that is the same every time, that is not, nothing new is happening, you want to get the customer to open the app very often, and you want to get the customer intrigued to be a frequent user. I think that building a customer experience that is reliable, the customer knows what to get and is stable, but also that every session, every experience includes a surprise. I think that is a way to also build loyal users and long-term, very sticky user relationships, combined with a really cool contribution model, how you can learn from customer interaction and continuously, ideally in real time, as in, for example, Spotify app, improve the customer experience to let the customer make the relevant experience for you. I think that could be a good, maybe short answer, but super exciting topic, and could continue for long here.
Thank you so much for joining. It's been a pleasure. And yeah, take care and have a good day.
Thank you, Pontus.
You've been listening to an episode of a Roaring podcast by Roaring IO. If you liked it, share it with a friend or a colleague. We would also love to stay connected with you. Please feel free to subscribe to the show. Thanks for listening and see you next time.